Well, everybody, I think the question that we all have to ask ourselves this weekend is, are we in January? And the answer is yes. Before I keep going with that dumb question, welcome back to another episode of the Bodacious Rant with Burn and Rye. You know, I'm Rye, of course, and Burn's that other handsome gentleman there. So thank you guys for joining us on another episode of 2026. I can't believe we're already here and stuff. It's still crazy to believe, but oh man, after the incredible high we had with 28 years later, a week ago. In January, like I was saying in the last review, it's one of those things that there's always gonna be bad movies for the most part. January was the designated bad movie month, but I will say 2020 when COVID hit, that's when it kind of changed, because I want to say that's when we got Invisible Man, Birds of Prey around. I think those are actually more like February-ish, but January is one of those things like, okay, there's actually some good movies coming out. That's weird. And since then, there's always been one or two movies that kind of grace the January month, but then the rest of it is just ass. Let's just say it that way. And one of the movies we're talking about is definitely that. Not trying to be super negative, but just wasn't good. We're talking about the latest Chris Pratt helmed movie, which is Mercy, starring Chris Pratt. Chris Sullivan from oh my god, that one show. This is Us. Is that the show? I forget. I apologize. But he's in a lot of stuff. He was also in Stranger Things, the very first episode, and a few other actors I can't even name off the top of my head. Rebecca Ferguson. Yeah. Well, I'll talk about why I forgot hers. So we'll get. Thank you, Byrne. But you're right. How could I forget about that angel? But this is a spoiler-free review, so we're not going to ruin it for you, even though, again, I'm not going to get into it. But so if you did happen to like the video, or you like our commentary regarding everything, feel free to show us your support with a thumbs up, ring the bell for notifications, and of course subscribe just to keep contributing to the ranting community and just join the numbers. We gotta grow like some sort of thing, some sort of moss or fungus. I don't know. Yeah, that sounds gross, but I'm out of it. So Mercy is a dystopian sci-fi kind of noir crime thriller in which Chris Pratt plays Detective Raven, who is being held by an AI legal judge system that is essentially saying you have an hour and a half to prove your innocence or you die. And he is held in prison, or he's on trial, quote unquote, for the murder of his wife in the film. And I don't really have anything against Chris Pratt. I love him as Star-Lord, Magnificent Seven. Like, he's been in some good movies, but this is one of those ones that just gave me the epiphany that he is not a leading man, with all due respect. Like, this movie was just, not only his acting wasn't great, Rebecca Ferguson, which I forgot she was in it because her talents were completely wasted as the AI judge, Judge Maddox, or something like that. I can't remember. Sounds like one of those daytime television shows. And everybody else in it was just there. I feel like this one tried to be like, it gave me some Eagle Eye vibes with how much technology is involved. Very much felt like it was trying to be Minority Report, and can't think of the other movie off the top of my head, but like I said, it tried to be a dystopian sci-fi, tried to be a crime thriller, a neo-noir film, just all kinds of stuff, and it just did not succeed. But before I continue on, Burn, and get my rantings out of the way, what did you think of this movie? Was there any positives you can find in this one whatsoever that I just can't see?
I mean, I think probably the only positive thing about this movie is the premise itself. It's one of those things that feels unfortunately wasted in this movie, and that's disappointing, because you like you mentioned, it has those elements of like things like Minority Report, right? Where that movie sort of tackled the idea of what if you could stop crime before it happened? Like what are the ethical and moral implications of that? And then in this movie, it's like, okay, well, what if you remove the human element of the due process, of like what it's like when you have your trial of your peers, what if that's taken away, and what if it's this artificial system that's doing it in its place? So the premise itself was pretty interesting, and one that was like, okay, maybe if they get that right, at least this could at least be one of those things where like maybe the execution wasn't great, but the ideas they sort of tackled were interesting enough for me to enjoy myself. But the way that they executed on the premise and all the different like social and political issues that they sort of, not really, kind of, maybe touch on in a messy and really just baffling way, it's just incredibly disappointing, to say the least. And as you mentioned, like I don't really have anything against Chris Pratt either as an actor. I've enjoyed him for the most part in the roles he's in, but this really is sort of a tough ask for even a really good actor, right? You know, where you're one person in a room and effectively like the movie is just entirely on you. You know, you're sort of shouldering the weight of everything when it comes to the emotion, when it comes to storytelling. There's a rare few actors who can even pull something off like that, and it is a little bit of too much of an ask, I think, for Chris Pratt to do, because I don't think he really has that emotional range, or at least he didn't in this performance, to carry I think the role sort of required to make it more interesting and more dynamic, because the character itself is on paper pretty interesting, but again, the execution of it all leaves a lot wanting, and Rebecca Ferguson, like you mentioned, does feel pretty wasted here. I was joking to you that hey, you know, this probably was one of the easiest paychecks she ever got, just because of the way that this role is. But yeah, other than that, it's like, you know, she gives it as best as she can, but her being this sort of like AI image essentially for this whole movie doesn't lend itself a lot to a lot of her more interesting talents as an actress. So that's unfortunate. And yeah, like I mentioned, everything else that the movie touches on is just sort of done so in a way that it's trying to be inoffensive while also trying to say something at the same time, but at the end of it, not really saying anything. So that's pretty much annoying. But my biggest issue is just the way that this movie is filmed. It is very much like, I mean, this is Amazon MGM production, and it's very much like one from last year that a lot of people had a lot of fun with online, which was the War of the Worlds movie with Ice Cube. This is done so in that similar fashion, where it's just a lot of, you know, different like camera footage, you know, surveillance footage, and it was just a mess to look at a lot of the times. I couldn't imagine watching this movie in IMAX 3D, and just the thought of it just, you know, keeps me up at night in fear of like what movies are becoming, where it's just like this feels as AI generated as the character Rebecca Ferguson plays in this movie. Oh, but man, yeah. So not that things like this can't be done well. There have been a few that have used this sort of a technique to be interesting. Searching is the movie that comes to mind. But this movie just fumbled it in every way, and is much more closer to last year's War of the Worlds than Searching was.
Yeah, you know, this also reminded me that I feel like it also got a lot of vibes of like that Jake Gyllenhaal movie. It was from like 10 plus years ago, like 14 years ago, where he was like trying to figure out the events on a train, but it was a very similar style where it's like
Source Code.
Source Code, thank you.
Yeah.
That's the other movie I was thinking of, like Source Code and Minority Report. But the biggest things with me is that given everything that's going on in the US, like society within the last year, specifically the government and law enforcement, this movie felt very tone deaf. And given not every movie has to be related to real life or portray the political events. I'm not trying to say it should do that, but with matters like the legal system and law enforcement and people's perception of it, you think the writers would have written it to make a stance like what Byrne was saying. And this movie, yeah, it literally doesn't know what it wants to do. It's like it's trying to walk that line of like, well, we think this, but we support this in a way, and it's like, what does that do for any of it? So I would say it's very tone deaf in that way, and just very like, you know, bad, like neutral bad, just bad movie. And the CGI was just like, people can crap on Marvel for the last several years, like effects wise, which is fair, because, you know, the whole thing with that is that they film movies that are unfinished script wise, so then the VFX teams are like racing to finish everything by the deadline, and that's what this felt like. It was just bad CGI, especially near the end. So I do agree with Byrne. I cannot imagine seeing this in IMAX 3D or any sort of special format like that. And because of all that, I'm giving this movie a hard 1 out of 5. I definitely don't recommend this, even if you are a Chris Pratt fan. It is just not a great movie, but this one and another movie we're gonna review that you'll see shortly is just, it's like, man, these are definitely like paycheck movies. Like everybody in on it's like, I'm just getting paid so I can pay for my car, pay my rent, go on vacation, whatever. I just want to get this done with. So yeah, I don't even recommend this a $5 Tuesday. Wait till this gets streaming on a platform you're already paying for, so you don't have to waste any more money, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie definitely answers your question that you posed at the beginning of the review, where it's like, are we in January? And this movie emphatically says yes. This is very much of that type of January movie that we've come to sort of expect, you know, at this point. Like you mentioned, there are a few gems here and there every year that sort of make you think, oh, maybe, you know, the studios aren't just using this month as a dumping ground. But then you get things like this where it's like you said, I feel like this would have felt much more at home on like Amazon Prime, that you can just turn on and watch on your TV, which, if you know me and if you know Ryan, that's something we don't want movies to do, right? Because we want all these really good movies to be seen in a theater format, and the fact that we get something like this in the theater and not something like Frankenstein or Wake Up Dead Man, it's just incredibly disappointing and disheartening to see that the movie industry, it seems to be moving in this direction. But yeah, for all the reasons that you listed, and then for all the reasons that I did, I'm giving this one a 1 out of 5 as well. I can't imagine really anyone having a good time with this, unless maybe you just are looking for just something to watch and maybe kind of half watch and probably fall asleep watching this at night or something, because this movie does not require a lot of attention. It doesn't really demand it either, unfortunately. So yeah, this is one that you can definitely skip. And like Ryan said, check out if you're passively interested when it's on a streaming service and you can watch it for free. Because unfortunately, this one doesn't really earn your money. Yeah, I can't really say anything more about it. This is very disappointing.
Although I will say, for those of you who are maybe hopeful and think we're bashing it, in my theater that can house probably a couple hundred people, out of the dozen or so that were there, one person did applaud at the end a little bit. So
one person did applaud in mine. So
you see, there you go.
There might be someone out there who will enjoy the hell out of this, and good for them.
Yeah, if you enjoy it, God bless you. Not trying to bash on that, although I will ask you questions like, expand on why you liked it, kind of thing, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, hard 1 out of 5 for me and Byrne. We definitely do not recommend this, but totally up to you all. Stay tuned for our next reviews coming up, everyone. Like I said, we're in 2026, so let's all go into it with as much good vibes as possible, and as always, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and as always, we'll catch y'all on the next one.